So live from our bedroom, this is Kevin and Melanie Eccles, and we just wanted to take some time this morning and share our story and tell you a little bit about our lives in the last 12 years together. And it's been a good 12 years, but we just wanted to tell you a little more about that and about what God's been doing in that.
Yeah, so one of my desires as a little girl was to have children. I didn't think a whole lot about my career or even who I was going to marry. Then I met Kevin, and we got married right after we graduated from college in 2008. And we decided we were going to wait a couple years to try to have kids because Kevin was going to grad school. And about 2 years into marriage, we thought, okay, let's try. I think we're ready for this.
Unfortunately, it didn't happen right away, and so after a while we started to get a little nervous, a little discouraged, and it never really crossed our minds that we might be a couple that had trouble having kids. It's not something you really worry about, and then it happens to you. And, there were lots of long kind of periods of thinking about it and worrying about it and crying over it and praying over it. And unfortunately, at the time, we couldn't afford to go to a doctor, so there was nothing we could do.
It wasn't so much that we didn't have what we wanted right then. It was just the wondering, not knowing what God had in store, but what God did through that time was an incredible spiritual transformation in both our lives. But I can especially testify to what He's done in my life, and it was through those years of suffering and longing, late nights and early mornings by myself with the Lord, that I was transformed into trusting Him, into having faith despite my circumstances, believing that He is good no matter what, and that He is trustworthy and He's faithful.
One of the things that was especially difficult, especially someone who was working in a church, was people felt this need to cheer us up about it. And, we moved to one church and someone said, "Oh, don't worry, there's something in the water here. Every associate pastor at this church has always had kids once they get here." And 3 years later, we left that church and we still hadn't conceived. We still didn't have our little boy or girl, and that was hard, not only dealing with what we were going through personally, but also dealing with how do we share this with people who weren't comfortable with a sad story still being sad. People felt the need to make it happy or to make it okay, or they felt like somehow if we were sad that was an accusation or an indictment on God, and so they were backing away from that. They're almost afraid of that. And so part of our story, too, is sharing that it's okay if you're in a sad place. It's okay if you're dealing with something. There is room for that in the church, or there should be room for that in the church.
I think another thing that I learned in our struggle and our longing, which is different for both of us. A mother's heart is different than a father's. And so it was a bit more tumultuous for me. And I had emotions, I had really good days and I had really bad days, and it just depended, and that was okay. And having my husband and having a community of people around me who were willing to gently ask, "How are you today?" It's okay to ask someone how they're doing, and to know that you're surrounded with people who genuinely care and aren't just, trying to invade your privacy. They just want to be there for you.
At one point, we had finally gotten health insurance, and we could afford to pay for some of these fertility treatments. And the first few rounds had failed, and then there was surgery, and that didn't seem to work. And then there was surgery and medication, and that didn't seem to work. And finally, we'd come to this last month. And we said, you know what, we have done just about everything we can, and the next steps were horrifyingly expensive. And we said, we can't justify that. Like, this is not a step we want to take. And so we said, this is it. if this doesn't happen, we'll just let go and the doctors won't be involved anymore.
We're done.
We're done. And we thought that month had come and gone and failed too. And I remember standing in our bedroom and I looked at Mel and I said, okay, well, the doctors have had their say. It's now time for God to have his. In that moment, there was this acceptance for both of us that we said, you know what? Not every story has to end with a happily ever after kind of ending. And at that point, we were ready to be a couple and maybe someday to adopt or maybe do foster care. But at that point, we had really made peace with the idea of not having our own biological children.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the other half of the story too. Is that some stories are sad and some stories are dark and they have broken places. But God is good in those broken places. And sometimes the story ends with God giving us exactly what we desired for so long. Mm-hmm. And that is the happy ending to our story.
Yeah. There she is.
Hi, baby girl.
Hey, there you are.
Good morning.
Hey, kid. Yeah, this is a camera.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to be a video star.
Yeah. Hi. Hi.
This is Kevin Eccles and Melanie Eccles and Kirsten Grace Eccles. And this was our story.